Long ago, in the heart of the majestic Andes, where emerald forests kiss the endless blue sky, lived a people who revered the earth and all its creatures. Among them, the Quechua, guardians of ancient wisdom, shared tales passed down through generations. And one such tale, whisper-light yet profound, speaks of a time when the very world seemed to turn to ash, and a hero emerged from the most unexpected of places. This was a world of breathtaking beauty, a tapestry woven with emerald leaves and sapphire streams, where life thrived in perfect harmony. Every creature, from the mighty jaguar to the industrious ant, played its part in the grand design. The air hummed with the symphony of existence, a chorus of chirps, rustles, and the gentle whisper of the wind through the leaves. In this verdant paradise lived Kanti, a hummingbird barely bigger than a thumb, but with a spirit as bright as his iridescent feathers. He spent his days dancing from blossom to blossom, a tiny jewel of the forest, bringing life to the flowers and joy to those who watched him. He was often overlooked, a fleeting blur of color, but his presence, like all things in nature, was essential. But even the most idyllic harmony can be shattered. One sweltering day, a new, terrifying scent drifted on the breeze, the acrid smell of smoke. At first it was a whisper, a distant threat. Then, a faint, ominous glow painted the horizon. The forest, usually alive with cheerful sounds, grew eerily quiet. The animals, sensing danger, stirred with unease. The wise old shaman, with eyes that had seen many seasons, looked to the west with a heavy heart. "The fire spirit awakens," he murmured, his voice laced with dread. A great fire, born from a lightning strike or a forgotten spark, was sweeping through the dry season's parched undergrowth, devouring everything in its path. It was a monster of flame, roaring closer with every passing moment, threatening to consume their sacred home. Panic began to ripple through the animal kingdom. The forest dwellers, mighty and small, were gripped by terror. The deer bolted, their hooves pounding the earth in a desperate flight. The monkeys chattered wildly, scrambling through the trees, their usual agility replaced by sheer panic. Even the powerful jaguar, king of the jungle, paced anxiously, his roars of defiance swallowed by the inferno's growing roar. They watched helpless, as their beloved home, their source of life, began to succumb to the ravenous flames. "It's too big. We cannot stop it," cried a majestic eagle, its usually piercing gaze now clouded with despair. A bear grumbled, "What hope do we have against such a force?" The Quechua people, guardians of the land, gathered, their faces etched with sorrow. They prayed, they chanted, but the fire paid no heed to their pleas. Despair settled over the forest like a suffocating blanket. Amidst the chaos and the overwhelming sense of doom, a tiny iridescent flash darted into motion. It was Kanti, the hummingbird. Instead of fleeing with the others, he flew towards a small drying puddle, no bigger than a paw print. With his delicate beak, he scooped up a single precious drop of water. Then, with a determination that defied his minuscule size, he turned and flew directly towards the roaring wall of fire. The other animals, caught in their own fear, barely noticed. But Kanti, unwavering, reached the inferno and released his single drop onto a searing ember. Sizzle! A tiny, almost imperceptible puff of steam rose. Undeterred, he flew back to the puddle, collected another drop, and repeated his journey. Back and forth he went, a tireless beacon of iridescent light against the terrifying orange glow, carrying drop after drop, each one a testament to an unyielding spirit. Finally, the mighty eagle, who had soared above the highest peaks, could no longer contain its bewilderment. It swooped down, landing near Kanti's busy flight path. "Kanti!" the eagle cried, its voice echoing with a mix of disbelief and pity. "What are you doing?" "The fire is enormous." "Your tiny drops are useless against such a monster." "You are merely wasting your energy." "You must flee." Other animals, pausing their panicked escape, echoed the eagle's sentiment with worried chattering and grunts. They saw futility, an act of hopeless madness. But Kanti paused, hovering for a moment, his tiny wings beating a determined blur. He looked at the vast, consuming inferno, then back at the bewildered faces of his fellow creatures. Kanti, small but clear and resolute voice. "I know," he chirped, his voice surprisingly firm. "I know I cannot put out the fire by myself, but I am doing what I can. I am doing my part." The eagle was stunned into silence. Kanti's simple, powerful words hung in the smoke-filled air. "I am doing my part." It wasn't about success. It was about action. It wasn't about ego. It was about responsibility. A ripple went through the forest. First, a small squirrel, inspired by Kanti's unwavering spirit, scampered to a puddle, soaked its bushy tail, and ran towards the edge of the flames. Then a flock of smaller birds, ashamed of their inaction, began to dip their feathers in water and shake them over the burning foliage. The monkeys, seeing their smaller brethren act, began to collect water in large cupped leaves, mimicking Kanti's brave flights. Even the mighty elephants, with their incredible strength, began to draw water with their trunks from the distant river, spraying powerful arcs towards the inferno. The Quechua people, witnessing this astonishing sight, animals and birds, great and small, united in a common purpose, were moved to their core. They grabbed gourds, clay pots, anything that could hold water, and formed human chains, passing buckets from the river to the fire's edge. Drop by drop, splash by splash, stream by stream, the tide began to turn. The collective effort, fueled by the tiny hummingbird's unwavering resolve, began to make a difference. The fire, though still fierce, found its advance slowed, its roar diminished by 1,000 tiny acts of courage. Hours turned into a grueling twilight, but the determination never wavered. Finally, as the first stars began to pierce the smoke-laden sky, the fire, exhausted by the combined force of every creature's will, began to recede. Much was lost, but much more was saved. From that day forward, the legend of Kanti, the hummingbird, was whispered through the Andes. It was a story not just of a fire, but of the profound truth that even the smallest creature, with the purest intention and the courage to act, can inspire a movement, can ignite hope, and can make an immeasurable difference in the face of overwhelming crisis. So, the next time you feel small, next time you face a challenge that seems too vast to conquer, remember Kanti, remember the legend of the hummingbird, for it reminds us that true power lies not in size, but in the heart, and that by simply doing our part, no matter how small it seems, we hold the potential to change the world.